I was talking to Dad recently, and he was like, I really like the podcast. I don't know what it is, but I just really like Eric's voice. I don't know if he just has a better microphone than you or whatever.
That's funny.
Not to say that I don't like your voice.
He commented to me about my voice as well, which is really funny because I think your voice is better than my voice. I need some more inflection. Well, like I texted you on Friday, we are officially on Apple Podcasts now. I had to manually go in and get an Apple ID and submit our thing for review to make sure that we were actually real people or something. I don't know how it works. But we're there.
We are indeed real people.
Yep.
I think.
And we have 3, soon to be 4 episodes available to listen to. Hopefully this increases the number of listeners we have. Can you
see like how many people have listened to each one?
Yeah, well, I can see through Anchor, where our podcast is hosted on Anchor for the RSS feed, which I still don't know how all that works, but it's there. And can you say we have dozens, plural, of listens if we have a single dozen of listens?
I don't think that constitutes dozens.
What if we get to 13? Is 13 does... Well, what if let's refresh. This is really fun. Spinning Wheel of Death. Nope. Still 12. So we have an average of 4 listens per episode thus far. Which I guess
I feel
I'll
like
take.
That's pretty good.
For no promotion other than telling people, which is basically just our immediate family. I've been meaning to make a video, but I haven't yet.
I casually mentioned it to one of my friends today, but I think that's the extent, other than the one Facebook post I did.
Yep. Well, I'm concerned that this is not recording. Oh, maybe it is. I'm not a professional podcaster yet. Still working out the kinks.
I tried to cocoon myself so you wouldn't be able to hear the motorcycles in the distance, and you can still hear them.
Yep, I noticed that when I was editing last time. There was also, I have the ability to like mute things, or like to mute, so like I can mute my stream when you're talking or your stream when I'm talking. So there was one point where I asked you a really long question so that I could get up and go get water and stuff from the fridge. So I was able to like just completely cut all those sounds out. But the motorcycles last time were not able to be cut out.
Yeah.
Or there's me putting the glass down on the table, which I don't know if you heard that, but I'm sure the microphone did.
Yeah, I'll be excited to get my microphone fixed.
Yep. So after the last one, I texted you asking what you would like to talk about this time. And you suggested maybe talking about family vacations, past family vacations. And 2 nights ago, trying to fall asleep, I was trying to put together a list of all the different family vacations. And there are a few. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I pulled up the list and I was surprised.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we want to make an entire episode out of this, because like last time we could probably make single episodes about each of these. But just to go through this list, before Elena and before Emily, there was definitely a time where I went to the West Coast or to Las Vegas, one of the two, to see family with mom and dad. And then I also was driven to Houston with mom and dad. And then after Emily, there was a trip to Duluth, possibly in 95, a trip to Las Vegas, possibly in 96, a trip to Canada, possibly in 97. Don't remember about any of those dates. And then after Elena showed up, there was a trip to Seattle, I'm pretty sure sometime between 1999 and 2001, when we went and saw Grandpa and Grandma and our uncle and his family. Another trip to Seattle in 2002. a trip to South Dakota in 2003, Disney 2004, possibly an Iowa wedding in 2005, possibly Wisconsin Dells in 2006, Washington, D.C. 2007, Las Vegas probably 2007, Florida 2008, Grand Forks 2008, Iowa wedding 2009, Florida 2010, Eric, Emily, and Dad go to see Elena in Iowa 2017. And then in addition, on trips where you and I weren't together, 2005, Eric, Dad to Las Vegas, 2006, Eric, Emily to Nashville, 2008, Eric, Dad to Fargo, 2008, Eric, Emily to Brainerd Staples with cross country, 2008, possibly Eric, Emily, Dad to Fargo via visiting our grandparents, 2008/9, Eric and Dad to Phoenix, Tempe over New Year's, 2009, family without Eric to Nashville. 2010, Eric mom to Annapolis. 2012, Eric Emily to Des Moines for Chick-fil-A opening. 2013, Eric Emily and mom to Colorado to drive me out to live there. 2018 and 2019, Eric Emily to Chicago. Dates that I don't know: Elena Dad to Florida. Elena M mom to Brainerd. I think you wrote that one. I did not.
I did. I wrote a couple of these.
Elena Dad to Houston. Elena Dad to Yellowstone. Elena Dad to Seattle, Colorado, North Dakota. Elena Mom to Disney X2. Elena Emily to Florida. Band trips for me: 2006 Colorado, 2007 Disney, 2008 Morris with Jazz Band, 2008 New York/Washington, 2009 St. Louis, and you, Mom and Dad, drove down as well, separate from the band, but to see us. 2010, when I was with Independent Drumline, we went to Dayton, Ohio. International trips for the two of us. I went to Amsterdam, Guatemala, Haiti, and Canada a number of times. Elena has been to at least Spain, UK, Italy, and Canada. Eric, by myself or with other people not in the family. 2010 to Wartburg College in Iowa to watch football. Worked in North Carolina 2011 to 2013, each of those 3 summers. Various trips during then to North, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee. 2011 to Sioux Falls, 2012 to Grinnell, Oshkosh, and Terre Haute, Indiana with cross country at Bethel. 2014 to Raleigh, 2015 back for a week at camp in North Carolina. 2016 New Mexico, 2016 working in Savannah for the summer. 2017 California, 2017 to Wyoming to see the solar eclipse. 2018 various around Minnesota, including Duluth, Grand Forks, Fargo, Hutchinson, and Bemidji/Lake Itasca. 2018 to Milwaukee, 2018 again to Fargo with some camp people, 2018 to Detroit, 2019 to Chicago. So
yeah, so there's a lot there.
There are quite a few. And along with all of those, there are innumerable trips to our grandparents, to Fargo, to Iowa, to Shaw family reunions in North Dakota, and to see the name redacted out in central Minnesota, along with, I'm sure, many, many others that I'm forgetting. So
yeah, and then I've had some other ones that I didn't put on here because I opened this document 10 minutes ago.
I had time last night where I was writing all this stuff down. So one thing for sure, before we get into any specifics, is this definitely kind of cements the privilege that we had to be able to travel to all these different places. I remember in high school one time, the choir went on a trip to Chicago, and I overheard one of the girls in the choir talking about how it was going to be her first trip out of the state of Minnesota. And I didn't say anything out loud, but in my mind I was like, how is this your first time out of the state of Minnesota? But then realizing to myself that not everyone has the opportunity to do traveling or have any reason.
Yeah, when I went to Spain with the band my senior year of high school, we were leaving the Minneapolis airport, and as we got on the plane, one of the kids next to me was crying, and a band mom turned to him and was like, "Hey, are you all right?" He was like, "Yeah, this is my first time on a plane." It was crazy because it was his first time on a plane, and it was literally my second trip to Spain. Just completely different life experiences. Yeah. One thing Mom always talked about was how she prioritized travel for us over other things.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing that I have grown to appreciate, emphasize for myself as well. That's part of why, with in 2018 when I moved back here, I was like just up in northern Minnesota trying to figure out what to do with work weekends that were on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So it's like, well, maybe I just drive around to places I have never been before. So that's why I had, or revisit places. But that's why I have a number of different trips around Minnesota that were just like day trips to go see places. Or even like my New Mexico trip, it was me and a friend of mine were like, hey, we've never been to New Mexico. It's only 3 hours from Denver. Let's go to New Mexico.
Yeah, I went with Mom on a day trip up to Lake Itasca once. It's crazy how you can just get in your car and drive places and be somewhere else.
That was a lot of our travels. We did seemingly have a major trip every year, typically in the summer, but like every year we would go somewhere. Which is why there's a lot of like 03 or 02, 03, 04. And then there are a couple of years when we doubled up. So I don't know if you want to get into specifics on some of these. I don't know how many of you... That's the other thing is I don't know how much stuff I remember from all these different trips. There's like maybe one story from each of these things, especially the older they get.
Mm-hmm. The one thing, if we just start at the oldest ones, your trip to Houston, I wasn't there.
Yeah, I was
I think
barely
you were
there.
like an infant. Yeah, but I just remember the story that there's a long stretch of road with like nothing there on the way to Texas. And Mom and Dad have talked about how they would play the radio. And it was like right around the time that Achy Breaky Heart came out. So it was like every other song on this like 8-hour stretch of road was just Achy Breaky Heart.
That's funny. The story I remember from that is there was somewhere along 35 in Oklahoma where I was just crying, and I wasn't a baby who typically cried a ton, but apparently there was just one stretch where I was wailing, and Dad's driving, and all of a sudden my wailing becomes muted because Mom had just thrown a blanket over my car seat.
Probably accompanied by Achy Breaky Heart.
I just don't think you understand. I think those are the lyrics.
So I think that the first one of these trips that I do have memories from... Well, I guess I do. The 2002 trip to Seattle, I do remember going to play mini golf in Canada.
Yeah.
I don't remember playing mini golf. I just remember that we were at a mini golf course, and as we were leaving, you and I were both super sunburnt.
I don't remember that.
And some family member was like, well, you should have put sunscreen on them. And a different family member was like, they'll be fine.
I've been sunburned so many times in my life that it's not super notable anymore.
Yeah, I don't know why I remember that specifically.
Oh, I remember more from that one, but there are memories that there was a trip before then that I think you would have been on, but I don't remember for sure when we went, but we like split time between Dad's brother and then Mom's mom and stepdad, so our grandparents and our uncle and his family, because it was interesting to me to be on that trip because it was like family from two different sides of our family, and it's like these people live really close to each other but they don't know each other, or like they don't hang out with each other, like thinking of that as a 8-9-year-old.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing about
Name redacted.
Our mom's sister. There was a family reunion for some part of that family. And it's interesting because Mom's sister was adopted by a different couple.
Name redacted.
And
Name redacted.
Are somehow related to Dad's family. So it was like two different sides of the family, different than these other two sides of the family in Seattle. Showed up to the same family reunion. It was like, how do you know these people?
Yeah.
Surprise, you're related. I don't know if that's a common thing in families, but going through our family tree, it's been interesting to find different things like that.
Yep.
But I would say that other than the brief memory of being in Canada. The first trip that I remember things from would be the South Dakota trip in '03.
Yep.
I just have random misplaced memories from it.
Yeah, that was I remember it being a fun trip. We did a whole lot of the Black Hills type things. Took our time on the way out and then the 11-hour drive on the way back.
I don't remember much of like the scenery or anything. I remember that we did go to the Corn Palace. I don't remember anything like from it.
Yeah, it was definitely more to see on the outside than on the inside from what I remember, at least for a 11-year-old.
I do remember one of the family stories. We were driving, it was maybe when we were driving out to Wyoming or back from Wyoming. I never knew what was going on. I was like 4. And we were driving through this like winding road, like through the plains, and we saw bears in the distance. And I was a 4-year-old, and I don't know what I was doing, but I just like wanted to warn everyone in the car about the bears, and I like went from the back seat, induction, roll up your windows.
Yep. Classic Elena.
And everyone in the car is like, what are you saying?
Yeah, that would have been there was an actual park or something where there were bears. Like we went there to see the bears.
I just remember being confused and never knowing where we were going, because I was like 4.
Yep. We did a fair number of things.
I don't know what I was trying to say with induction.
Yeah, that's one of your sayings that like got wrapped up into the family lore and repeated over and over.
Yeah, there have been a few of them.
Yep.
And I also remember that we did take a train ride on that trip.
Yep.
I don't remember much from it, except that Emily had a headache.
That seems fairly typical. I don't remember where the train went, but I think it started in Keystone, and it was like an old-timey train. And it like just the only purpose of the train was to go out and to go back.
I just remember Emily like turning to Mom and like, do you have any Tylenol? I think there's a picture of Emily on the train like with a bottle of water looking miserable. Because she had a headache.
Yep.
I also remember from that trip, I think I maybe mentioned it in the last one, or maybe it was just when I was talking to you. We went to Mount Rushmore. And I don't remember actually seeing Mount Rushmore. But we got ice cream at an ice cream shop at Mount Rushmore. And Emily and Eric got mint chip cones. And I got like a berry something or another. And my ice cream cone was so much bigger than both of theirs. And there's a picture in one of our family scrapbooks of me just like staring at this ice cream cone. Like, how on earth am I supposed to eat all of this?
See, I don't think our ice cream cones were smaller than yours. I think you just remember it because it was half the size of you. Like, it was enormous.
It was gigantic. I wonder if Mom can find that picture for us.
Maybe.
I'm just like staring at the ice cream cone, just like, what do I do?
And we bought they were at Mount Rushmore, like whatever the little shop deals there are.
Mm-hmm.
A very, very, very tall soft serve ice cream cone. Those are the things you remember. You don't remember the monument that was carved and blasted into the rock. You remember the ice cream cone. Like the royal you. Is that what that term is? The like young people.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one thing
I have a whole bunch of strange memories.
There's one thing I remember from that. We were walking in, I think it was at nighttime, but I was like parkouring before there was parkour, and I like jumped off this little, like it wasn't a railing, but it was like right next to the walkway, just raised up maybe a foot, and I like tried to do a 180 just jumping off this thing, and I just hit the ground, but all my momentum was still going backwards, so I just fell backwards and hit my head. But I don't think mom or dad saw, so I just like got up quickly.
Yeah, a story that Emily tells is there was one time, I don't think it was on vacation. I think it was actually in Minneapolis. They went out to like a Chinese buffet, and on the way out, like out to the parking lot to get in the car and go home, Emily got hit by a car, and the car like wasn't going very fast, but it knocked her over because she was small. And like the person got out of the car, was like, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." And then she just never told mom or dad because she thought she was gonna get in trouble because she got hit by a car.
I don't remember it happening, but I remember her telling the story.
Because she told me a few years ago, like, if I'm ever in the hospital and like can't speak and they find some weird thing on my left side, it's because I got hit by a car once. One of the things I think that was interesting about this list that you came up with was 2005 Iowa wedding, and you wrote flat tire.
Yes.
And I remember driving down to Iowa and having a flat tire, but it's not a memory that I have ever brought up to people because it's one of those things that's like so vague that I thought I was making it up or that like I had dreamed about it.
Yeah. So we were going down, our cousin was getting married, and we're driving down the day before so that we would get there the day before because there was going to be like stuff that morning and then the wedding in the afternoon. And we get a flat tire just across the Minnesota-Iowa border, pull off to the side of the road, and we all get out of the car, and dad is like trying to get the tire off, get the spare on or whatever. It's becoming clear that we're not going to make it down that day, which I had wanted to because I wanted to go golfing the next morning because that was going to be one of the things to do. But we were going to have to stay, I think, in Mason City and get the tire fixed and then be on our way the next day. But apparently, we're on the side of the road, got cars zooming past at 70 miles an hour, and I have the bright idea to say, "Man, it really makes you appreciate NASCAR." And I don't remember. I know that I'm sure it's a thing I said, but apparently Dad was about ready to kill me on the side of the road. Oh,
it really makes you appreciate NASCAR.
Oh man, that's a classic young teenage boy not understanding the situation around him.
I'm sure you thought it was important.
So we spent the night in Mason City or wherever, and then went down to Muscatine.
Yeah, the next trip on this list that I remember, we did Wisconsin Dells. I don't really remember anything from it. But the one after that, the Washington, D.C. trip, I have just a couple very specific memories. And I think the most vivid one is walking into the embassy suites in Washington, D.C. and going to check in and them going, "Oh, sorry, you're a little bit late, so we gave away your room. But what we can offer you is the presidential suite." And we were just like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great. Let's take the suite." And we walked into the suite, and it was one of the nicest hotel rooms that I have ever stayed in. There was like a dining room table that could fit like 8 people, 2 separate bedrooms, a living room. There was a step up in the room. Like there was a step in the hotel from the dining room area to the living room area.
Yeah. My memory of that is different. My memory is that mom and dad had planned on getting the suite and that the 3 kids weren't clued in on that, but I suppose I could be wrong about that. But it was a surprise I think to the three kids walking in the room, being used to normal hotel rooms, and all of a sudden, here's the nicest hotel room we've ever seen.
Literally the presidential suite.
That was kind of a crazy trip.
With a step.
I don't remember a ton from that. Like the actual being in Washington part. Because we started that trip driving through Virginia down to Roanoke. And we stayed in Roanoke because Mom had a work friend who was living there, or who lives there. And then Dad and I continued the next day down to Martinsville to see the NASCAR race, which was quite the trip in and of itself, trying to get out of that parking lot. We sat in the same spot for 5 hours waiting to get out of that parking lot. And then drove back up to Washington, had the experience walking in the hotel room, and then we had like 4 days in Washington, in and around Washington. And we experienced like a different season in terms of weather every single year, or every single day. It was a different season. Like we had spring, summer, fall, and winter all in the same week. Like at the start of the week, we were looking at the cherry blossoms, and at the end of the week, they'd all frozen off the trees.
Yeah, because I remember that like you and I, as per usual, got sunburnt the first day. And then when we left, it was literally snowing. The things I remember from that trip, I was really excited for that trip. I remember laying in bed and like trying to fall asleep and just like talking to myself and being like, I want to have one of those nights where you just close your eyes and then you open them again and then it's morning. Like you don't even feel like you slept. I just want to have one of those. And so then I just kept blinking in bed over and over again, thinking that I was just going to wake up and it would be morning. And I remember going to the airport and I had a stuffed animal frog who I named Froggy. I remember Mom being like, now you need to put Froggy through the x-ray machine. And I remember that because later on that trip, we were winding through the mountains in Virginia. And I threw up in the car all over Froggy and had to throw him away.
I don't remember that either, but I can imagine.
That was the trip, because I had had some issues with car sickness before, and so Mom and Dad were at the point where they were like, tell us if you feel sick so we can pull over. And I was sitting in the back seat of this rental car, and I just go, I think I'm gonna, and then I threw up everywhere.
Yep.
It's like, I did give you warning.
That was a thing. I remember that being a thing.
I don't know how they cleaned it up. I don't remember that. I just remember me being like, I did tell you. I did warn you.
Yep. Or at least you tried.
I did try. I was heartbroken that I had to throw away Froggy. It's like, no, we can clean him. We can wash him off once we get to the hotel. Elena, we are not carrying around a vomit-filled frog.
Yep. I've only ever gotten car sick once, and I didn't throw up on a stuffed animal. I threw up on a human. That was in the mountains of Guatemala. And that was not fun. I think if I had had breakfast that morning, I would have been fine, but I didn't. So like my stomach wasn't settled. And we're just like winding through all these windy roads through the mountains. And I'm sitting in the back seat of this van. And the only thing I'd had to eat was one grape. So when I threw up, it was purple. And it was on this girl from the trip. And I was so sorry. I still am so sorry. But that was not a fun experience.
Yeah, I considered making a YouTube video about some of my throwing up stories, because I don't throw up super often. Like, I'm not sick, but some of my vomiting stories, they're kind of funny. There was one. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing more so than it was funny. Like you throwing up on a girl on your trip in Guatemala. My first day that I ever went to a summer camp, I was on the bus, and I turned to a camp leader, and I was like, I don't feel good. And I told her, I was like, I don't feel good. And she was like, did you eat breakfast? Yeah. Well, maybe your stomach is just a little bit upset. Just put your head down on your backpack. Okay. Then, like, 5 minutes later, I tapped her on the shoulder, and I was like, I still don't feel good. And then I, like, threw up right near her. And then the bus had to pull over, and we were all late to camp, and then we got off the bus. Why are you late? Oh, some girl threw up on the bus. And then 4 days into camp, we were doing our, like, morning sing-along. It's like, oh, dude, Joe from the Button Factory. Oh, we did that on Monday. Oh, really? We were late. Some girl threw up on our bus. Don't bring me into this.
Yep.
And then I think the camp leader was like, well, at least you didn't throw up on your friend, and turned to just, like, the random girl I was sitting next to. Never sat next to her again. I never saw her after that.
I'm not sitting next to you anymore.
Yeah, no one wants to sit next to the girl who threw up into the bus aisle the first day at camp. One of the next trips on this list, Las Vegas. I remember, as per usual, a couple very specific things from that trip. That was a trip where Mom was traveling for work.
Yep.
And so she was already out there, and then we were going to meet her there and do, like, a family trip after her work stuff was done.
Yep.
And I remember that it was... Dad, like, pulled me out of school early so we could get to the airport. And either at the airport or on the way to the airport, we stopped at McDonald's. And I would have been 7, 8 at the time. And I got a Happy Meal. And there was this, I don't know what it was. It was this weird toy that, it was like this cartoon animal who had his arms out like he was giving you a hug. And then there was a button on his back that if you pushed, his arms would come together. So it looked like he was giving you a hug. And I just remember on the way to the airport, Eric grabbing the toy and pushing the back of the button on the back so he would move his arms. And don't forget to fasten your seatbelt. Just moving the arms as he talked.
I don't remember that.
I also remember that trip we went to an arcade. Because we were all too young to gamble.
Yep.
But they could take us to an arcade. And we went to an arcade, and one of the games that they had was the spin and win wheel. And you pull the lever and then you push the button. And when you push the button, there's like a light going around a circle, and you're trying to get the light to stop at a certain point. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was in 1st or 2nd grade, and I pulled the lever, and I go, now what? And Eric just pushed the button, and I hit the button and got the jackpot.
Yeah, I remember that
like,
being...
That's not fair!
I remember that being, you had no idea. There's like multiple people telling you, just push the button. And then you like hit the button without even understanding that you were hitting the button for the thing. And then you get the jackpot. And then Mom says
It's so not fair. She didn't even know what she was doing.
Mom says that for the rest of the week, you would just be like, we should just go back to that arcade because I could win again on that giant spin thing.
I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I've played that same game, not there, but other places since then. I've never hit the jackpot again. It's like a once in a lifetime. And I don't know why, but I thought that the best thing to do with all those tickets was to get, like, prizes for my entire class, my 1st or 2nd grade class. And so I got these, like, little rulers, and they were, like, 6 inches long. And inside the plastic, there were, like, stencils, so you could trace, like, a square or a triangle. Just coming back to school after this trip and just, hey, I hit the jackpot. Here's a ruler, everyone.
Share the wealth. Oh, man.
I probably still have that somewhere.
I would have no idea. Yeah. That was...
I also remember that trip, we had to switch hotels.
Yeah.
So it was like the night we came in, we just stayed at Mom's hotel, and I remember someone slept like on the floor.
I don't remember. Yeah, that's kind of
There were too many of
a
us.
5-person family. We had a lot of rollaway beds. But I remember that it was at the MGM Grand, and we had a picture of Patrick Stewart on our wall in our hotel room. And I was very big into Star Trek at the time. It was very exciting to have Captain Picard up on the wall.
I think that trip we also went out to go see Dad's mom.
Yeah, well, she
lived in Vegas at the time.
Yeah, that's the only reasons I had ever gone to Las Vegas. Well, that's not entirely true. But it was easier to go to Las Vegas because Grandma was living there. So like in 2005, when Dad and I went to go see the NASCAR race, we just stayed at Grandma's. Or like whenever, I think I might have been in kindergarten when we went before, we stayed at Grandma's, or went because to see Grandma. That's another vomit story. I threw up at the Texas in their buffet. Apparently I had some bad milk.
Why were you drinking milk in the first place?
Because I was 4. I don't know.
I don't remember seeing Grandma, but I remember I sort of remember the layout of her house. I just remember thinking it was very triangular.
I don't remember the layout at all. I just remember that it was there.
There were either like vaulted ceilings or like the outside looked like a triangle or something, but I just remember thinking like, it's so pointy.
Yeah. Vegas is interesting because like with that trip, it was clear to me that while Vegas may not be a family friendly place, you can still like create a family friendly trip. But then I was there driving through to California in 2017. And when we drove back, we stayed at a casino hotel just off the strip and walked over to the strip and like up and down one block. And I was like, this is really gross. I'm ready to just go back to the hotel. Which was like not my experience of Las Vegas in the past. It was also like 98 degrees at 9 o'clock at night in July. So that didn't help.
But it's a dry heat.
Yeah, it just sits right on top of you, though.
Yeah, Mom promised me that if I graduate next year, she'll take me to Vegas. And I don't think that I've reminded her of it, and I don't think she remembers that she said it, but I have a video of her saying that if I graduate in 2021, we'll go to Vegas.
Yeah, apparently she offered me to go to Las Vegas when I turned 21, and I turned her down.
That doesn't surprise me.
Which I don't remember. But like, I'm not into
because you were at Bethel
at
and you like signed the agreement that you wouldn't drink and wouldn't gamble the entire time you were in college.
Well, there's that too, but I'm also not interested in gambling at all. That's why I stopped playing fantasy football. I don't like not having the control or feeling like I have the control. Like a slot machine just doesn't make any sense to me because like there's no skill at the game. You're just like pulling the lever.
Pull the lever, Kronk. I've enjoyed gambling. I can't gamble in Iowa because the gambling age here is 21, but in Minnesota it's 18. I've been to the casino a few times, and every time I've walked out ahead.
Good for you.
So I've had a lot of fun gambling.
Just gotta go back and do the spinning game. It's so easy.
Yeah, because the first time Emily took me to a casino, and we were playing slots, and I think I gave her $5 because it was like all the money I have, and then I walked out with $10. So not like a huge win,
big spender.
but I mean it was extra money. And then the next time I went to the casino, I think I brought $40, and I hit it, quote unquote, hit it big, and I walked out with $80.
Wow. Just doubling your money over there.
Yeah, so now I just need to go back. Can't go back now because of coronavirus.
That's how they get you, though.
I told Dad recently that I had considered driving out to Nebraska before the coronavirus got to like the pandemic level. I had considered driving out to Nebraska to find a casino because the gambling age there is also 18.
Just for funsies,
the Nebraska
or what?
casinos that I found. Yeah. The Nebraska casinos I found were closer than the Minnesota ones.
Yeah.
So I could just go out, spend a day there.
Because there are casinos right in Omaha. And the closest casino, what would it be, like Mystic? I don't know where Mystic is. I think it's on the south side.
Mystics and Shakopee.
Yeah, so that's probably the closest.
That's where I walked out with $80. The person I was with, I went with one of my friends, and she walked out, like, in the hole 150 or something.
I've also never had the amount of money where I could lose money, which, like, I realize doesn't stop people who are gamblers. But just, like, I've never been comfortable losing my money.
Yeah, it was like a special trip. My friend came up to visit me. I was like, Mom, she wants to go to the casino. I don't have money to gamble. And Mom was like, just take $40. You have $40. Then if you spend it, you're only out $40. And then I walked out with 80. I wonder what I did with that money.
Spent it somewhere.
I probably just put it right back in the ATM.
The only, like, gambly type thing where I remember winning big was I went with Grandpa to a Vikings preseason game one time, and Mom had, like, given him $20 to, I don't know, for spending at the game. And then there was a wheel where you, like, paid $20 to spin the wheel, and then there were prizes on the wheel. And I just happened to land on the slot where it was just one little between the two pegs instead of, like, a bigger triangle. It was just the one little triangle. And I got a jersey. Got a Randy Moss jersey. So that was very exciting. And apparently, Grandpa said to Mom that he wouldn't have done the wheel if she hadn't given him the $20. So thanks, Mom, for that. I still have that jersey, too. That's too big for me now.
Yeah. I've had some good luck with, like, giveaways. There was one time at Canterbury, the racetrack, the horse track in Shakopee. They used to do the Gopher Alumni Night. So it'd be like, Mom's a Gopher alumni, so we would get in for free. I mean, we'd get in for free anyways because we were under 18. But they did giveaways, and they were doing, like, a kids giveaway and entering all kids' names into the big bucket. They were pulling out names, and no one was there. And then I just, like, Elena Beck. And then they pulled a name. Elena Beck? That's me! And I won a football. Like a Gopher football.
Nice. Now, of course, just sitting here, I've remembered 2 other times when I won things. Last year at the State Fair, I won a ticket to go see Minnesota United, the soccer team. And then when I was in junior high, in 10th grade at church, I won an iPod in a drawing. Enough people had left. You had to be present to win, and enough people's names were drawn who weren't there that finally they got to my name.
That's kind of how I won these headphones. The headphones that I use, I was at a club with some friends, and I don't go clubbing often, but we were out of town, and it was like our excitement for the night. I don't go clubbing often. I never go clubbing.
Those lovely Ames clubs.
But they had been... Yeah, we were at a conference, and at the conference, this club had been handing out raffle tickets. And they were, the night at the club, drawing raffle tickets. Like, does anyone have this number? And they went through so many numbers that no one had that they were just like, is anyone within 5 of this number? It's like, yes, that's me. And then what they had us do, they pulled 5, they eventually got 5 people up there, and they're like, okay, now to win the prize, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a twerk contest. I was like, no. You can just give someone else the prize. It's not me. And then they made everyone twerk, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. And I was just kind of like awkwardly standing there, just like not at all dancing anywhere close to twerking. And then at the end, they were just like, huh, everyone gets a participation prize. So I won my headphones in a twerk contest that I didn't even win. I lost miserably.
Do you remember this past Christmas when we were playing Heads Up and you decided it would be a good idea to do the dance?
Oh.
And then
Thought it'd be a good idea to do the dance category.
It came to a twerk.
Not.
And there's Dad and Faye twerking. It's like, it's your own fault. It's your own fault this happened.
Yeah, that was a mistake. I always pick heads-up categories that I think I'm going to be good at, and then I'm trash at them.
Yeah.
Like, I always want someone to do the accents and impressions, because I think I'm so good at accents. And they come up as like, what are you even saying?
Yeah. Plus, there are ones on that, like sports ones, where I know that I would do fairly well, knowing what the things are that are coming up, but that the people I'm with have no idea what all the stuff is. So it's like, well, it's not going to help me to do a thing I would be good at if people can't give me the clues to figure the thing out.
Mm-hmm. I think it was that night when we were playing that I chose the Harry Potter category, and I was the one holding it, and it came up to Xenophilius Lovegood, Luna Lovegood's dad, and I couldn't remember his name, and I was just like, oh, it's her dad, isn't it? It's and then it was either you or Emily who were just like, you. When you're afraid of foreigners, and then time ran out, and I was just like, what?
And you skipped it, and then as we're doing the next clue, you're like, oh, Xenophilius Lovegood. And I was like, did you get that because of my clue?
Yeah, when you're afraid of foreigners. Dad and Faye were just sitting there like, what?
Hey everyone, this is Eric stepping in to let you know that the 2 out of 3 podcast is a self-funded production. Those of you familiar with the podcasting universe know that, with regards to production costs, this is a largely crowdsourced platform. However, I realized 2 things. 1, with the current state of the world, there are probably a lot of people who are a little long on the free time and a little short on the funds. And 2, this podcast is in its infancy, and you may want to hear more before deciding whether supporting us financially in any way is something you're interested in. I completely understand these points, so let me just give you some information to stick in your back pocket. Patreon.com is a website dedicated to connecting a large number and variety of creators with patrons who help fund projects they love. Funding can be given in increments in as little as $1 per month. This podcast you're listening to right now, the 2 out of 3 podcast, has its own Patreon page, patreon.com/2 out of 3 podcast. The great thing about this site for us is that it is more than a crowdsourcing site. It's a way to connect with the people who listen to the podcast. We can post some content exclusive for patrons, and we can post some content that is completely free to the public. If now or at any point in the future you are interested in supporting the show financially, head over to patreon.com/2 out of 3 podcast to go through that process. And even if you're not, head over there to see the different things we post related to the episode or to whatever else we might have to share. To learn more about the site and the show, head over to patreon.com/2 out of 3 podcast. That's all one word in lowercase with the number 2 and the number 3 in there. Patreon.com/2 out of 3 podcast. Thanks for listening and thanks for your support. Now back to the show. Well, we got a couple other trips on here. You have any other notable things we haven't mentioned from any of these other trips?
Seeing if anything stands
out. Did you
out.
do like marching band trips, or did you just have the random Europe trip that had nothing to do with music trip?
The first year I was in marching band, I was in 8th grade, we were trying to go to some parade in Michigan. And I signed up. Yeah, it must have been that. And I signed up. But by the deadline came for sign up, our band director was just like, so we have one person in drumline signed up, so we're not going.
Yeah.
And so then we didn't do any of those again, but we did do the international trip my senior year to Spain.
Yeah. That was one of the bad things about the band getting smaller, is that there weren't enough people to do things like that, because the trips were never mandatory. They were always voluntary. And they would try to do, at least when a previous band director that I had was doing it, we tried to do like one more expensive trip and then one less expensive trip back to back, which is why we did Colorado and drove to Colorado and then went to Disney and flew down to Disney. And then that kind of got flipped on its head a little bit when we did the Washington parade the next year. And then St. Louis the following year. That St. Louis trip, man.
The St. Louis trip was interesting.
There were some things that happened on that trip. That was like the only time I've ever rebelled or been a part of a group rebellion. It was 4th of July night, and we were at the Arch. There's like a festival at the Arch, and we're supposed to stay at the Arch for like 5 hours before the last concert of the night. And there was absolutely nothing to do. And so we heard that so no one's supposed to leave the park. We heard that one of the boosters had told her daughter and a group of her friends that they could leave and go out into the city. So whoever was in my group that was leading the charge decided it would be okay for us to also leave and go out into the city. And we both groups ended up at a TGI Fridays. And so we're like sitting at the Fridays. We finish our meal, and in walks a different band booster who like comes up to our table, and the thing this guy decides to say at the table is like, "Your son is over there." Like trying to pass the blame. And one of the best things about it is that one of the kids in our group, one of the guys, his parents were in the TGI Fridays. So we like saw them, and they didn't say anything about it. But that was like, I'm running through as we're walking back to the park in trouble. Like, what bad could happen here to me specifically? Like, I already graduated, so they can't do anything with that. And then mom and dad are already down here, so if I get kicked off the trip, they're already here. They don't have to come get me. But then nothing happened.
Did you actually get in trouble? You didn't get in trouble.
It was just like a talking to. But again, it's like all of us were seniors. What were they going to do? And probably half of us had a family down there already.
Yeah, that trip was interesting for us because you did a parade in Jefferson City and then another parade in a suburb of St. Louis.
Webster
Groves. And
that
so
was a long parade.
I think it was the night of the 3rd, we drove from Jefferson City to St. Louis, and they were doing 4th of July fireworks like a couple days. And so we drove in, not on the 4th, but a day near the 4th. I think it was the 3rd. And they were doing fireworks. And the entrance to our hotel was blocked off. And I just remember Dad getting so frustrated because we were trying to drive into our hotel and, like, it was right there. And Dad, he, like, rolled down his window and tried to talk to the traffic cop. He's like, "I need to go there." "Nope, sir, keep it moving." Just pushing us further and further away from the hotel. And Dad was just like, "It's right there!" Drove in, like, some back entrance.
That reminds me
Getting there, and the valet, I think it was, like, the valet was like, "This isn't the front entrance." Like, we couldn't get here any other way.
That reminds me of being in the parking garage after a concert in Minneapolis, and you're supposed to pay on the way in.
Oh.
And we're sitting, and we apparently were the only people who had paid on the way in. And Dad sitting in the car driving, "I already paid!" All these people trying to pay to get out. And he's rightfully frustrated about being stuck in this line. Another thing from that trip, on the way back, one of the buses broke. So it was like just leaning to the side. like on the right side. Like the bus was drunk or something. So we had to like call mechanics from the bus company to come down and service the bus. So we're just at this park. I don't even remember. If I thought hard enough, I could remember where in Missouri we were. But we're at this park and we decided to play Ultimate Frisbee. And I hadn't had the foresight to think about all my clothes were in my luggage under the bus, and I didn't have like a spare t-shirt or anything. So when we finally got done 5 hours later and got back on the bus, I was just like soaked in sweat, just sitting there on the bus. Like, this may have been a mistake.
Just maybe.
It was bad.
I remember that trip. You said the Webster Groves parade was a long one.
Yeah.
And I remember that when Mom, Dad, and I went to the parade, we like saw the start of the parade. And we sat far enough along the route that we thought that we were near the end. And so once the band passed and then the whole parade finished, we went out and we got lunch. Then it was like as we were leaving after eating, we saw the band bus go by. And then Mom texted you or Emily and was like, What took you guys so long getting out of there? What are you talking about? We just got done marching. So it was like a 2-mile parade.
Yeah, that was... Marching band was notorious for having people say that parades were longer than they were. Like the Mason City parade, people would be like, oh, it's a 2.5-mile parade, get ready for it. In which, like, actually it's 1.25 miles. Webster Groves may rightfully have been 2.5 miles. It was so stinking long. And we got into the parking lot at the end, and we always marched to the bus, and we wouldn't stop marching until we got to the bus and then got called to attention, and then like whatever the terminology is for getting out of attention. But we're marching into the parking lot, and someone from a different band is like, are you guys like a military school?
Yeah, one of my favorite stories about the band was it the year before that trip that you went to DC?
Yeah, in Washington. Yeah, 2008.
Yeah, so the year when you went to Washington, I remember hearing the story. We weren't there, but you guys were marching to the buses, and it was like 100 degrees outside, and some band or parade coordinator was just like shouting, like, you guys need to stop, you're all gonna overheat, stop it! And the band director just being like, keep marching. Then this parade coordinator being like, you need to stop, I know what I'm doing, I've been doing this for 10 years. And then the band director just monotone, I've been doing it for 30.
Yeah.
It's like, the kids are going to be fine, keep it moving.
That parade was interesting because we started on the mall, and I don't remember where. We went down some road with historic buildings on either side, like most of Washington is. But we started at the mall, and we must have gotten there like 2 hours early because we were just half dressed in uniform, waiting to get the call to get fully dressed and get set. And it just wasn't coming, so we're just standing there under these trees waiting. And then we had been told that you cannot hold the parade up. You can't do like our typical show. For people who don't know about how parade marching works, is that there's like an actual 4-minute long show that spans like, you come into a judging area that's like 100 yards down from a truck, and as soon as your band gets in there, you are being judged, and you're not done being judged until the last person is out of that area. So you march in, you do your 4-minute show, and you march out. That apparently was not okay for this. So we had what we called the parade show, which is where you would just straight march through the music. But we had one measure of funky timing. It was like 1-5-4 measure. So we couldn't just straight march through the parade show because we would get off on our steps. So normally we would just take that measure and stop and then keep going. But the director felt like even that was too long of a wait. So we worked it out in practice beforehand to just stop for 3 beats instead of for 5 beats. Like, that's how close we were, how much the director felt that we couldn't stop to hold up this parade. And then we get into this actual parade, and there is a band in front of us, possibly from Louisiana, I don't remember. But they had no problems holding up the parade. And I'm just sitting there in the middle of this parade being like, why we took all this time trying to make it so we only stopped for 3 beats during the entire show, and now we're just standing here waiting for these people to move. It's like we could have done our whole normal show.
Yeah, I remember the first year we did our Mason City parade, we did the normal show and we also did the parade show, which our parade show wasn't quite the same. We just did like the first third of our music, like we did that whole part of the show and then we would reset. And I just remember that like we were going and it was my first parade and it was so long. And the band director was standing right next to me and like right after we had reset, he was just like, another one! And you're not supposed to break attention or anything. And I just like glared at him. It's like, we're not doing another one. And we did another one. And another one. Just kept doing them.
Yep. Yeah, the people in Mason City weren't too fond of us. Because the first time that the band did that parade was the year before I got into marching band. And apparently there had been one band that had won like 25 or 30 years in a row. And then we just completely blew them out of the water because it's like parade marching in Minnesota was a different beast than it was in Iowa. And then people were very upset. There were comments on like the local newspaper's story about the parade about people hating our band. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think we only did that parade twice when I was in marching band, and then we stopped doing it. Then we stopped doing parade marching all along. But the closest we ever got in scoring to another band was like 3 points away, which is significant in marching band. That's a significant difference. And the band that we were 3 points away from was another Minnesota band.
Who else was down there? Did Osseo go down there?
Osseo went down one year.
I do remember that now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just we were the only Minnesota band down there. I wonder if that was the year that I went and saw you guys. I don't remember.
I guess I don't know if they were there. I don't know if they were there both years that I did the parade. My first year of marching band is kind of a blur.
Somehow, my first year marching band, I was like, I would get out of uniform super fast, and I wasn't typically super hot when I was done. And I like at Alexandria, I managed to make it all the way back to judging. So like walked almost a mile back to judging to watch the end of the parade. And then the next 3 years, I couldn't get out of uniform without having my t-shirt completely wet with sweat. I was like, what was I doing differently freshman year? It's like there was a parade, I marched with a full long sleeve shirt under my uniform. And I was fine. Like, granted, it was like in the 60s or something during that parade, but I would have never, ever thought to do that any of the next 3 years. So I don't know what changed, but it was a very uncomfortable situation getting out of uniform most of the time.
Yeah, I was always sweaty, not like drenched in sweat, but my first year at Alexandria, big final parade, I remember judging was the very first show, which is not always in a parade, so we just got judging over and done with. Then I think we did 2 more shows, and in like walking or marching towards the second show, one of the assistant director, Sam, he came up to me and he was marching alongside me. He's like, left, and clapping. I was like, I think I'm marching in beat, am I not? And then I was just like so exhausted and fatigued. I was just like, I can't play my instrument anymore. At some point, a band mom came up to me and gave me a water bottle, and I just like downed the entire water bottle. And the rest of the parade, I don't think I played a single note, so I just did judging and then marched holding my saxophone.
Wow.
But I didn't pass out.
Apparently, in 2007, I think it was 07. 07 or 08, doesn't really matter. Anyways, we're marching in the Brooklyn Park Parade, and there was one point where the drum major is directly in front of us as we're marching down. And he said that he almost had to stop himself from laughing at one point during the parade because he looked at my face and I just looked so exhausted. Like, to the point that he almost laughed out loud at my expression. I think it would have been 08.
Yeah,
I think it was
the second year. When I was in ninth grade, it was the last year that the band did the Mason City Parade. And there was one point in our show where we did like not like marching, but actually like dancing. And so we would turn and we would face our dance partner and we would do just like a short dance. I remember the first show, my partner, like, she was still serious in her expression, but she just like looked so like happy to be marching. And then by the last show, like, her angles were off and she was just like glaring at me and she didn't want to do it. She was sweating and she just looked so defeated. It's like, welcome to Mason City.
Yeah.
It's like we would plie and we were supposed to smile at each other and she just did kind of like help me, like that kind of look.
Yeah,
That was an
marching band
interesting
is
year in
quite the
marching
physical task, especially since none of the parades were the same length. That was always, you would like almost circle the calendar dates for the short parades, looking forward to those ones.
Yeah, Lake Crystal, that was my favorite parade. It was only 3 shows long.
And you didn't get to do Malacca. Malacca was short. We stopped doing that because it ended up on the same day as Brooklyn Park.
And then everyone else stopped doing Brooklyn Park.
Yeah.
My first year, the Brooklyn Park Parade was the same day as both the Owatonna and the Waconia Parade. And almost every band would do Owatonna and Waconia because there was an Owatonia award for the top band between the 2 parades.
Huh.
But what we had to do is we had to go do the Brooklyn Park Tater Days Parade and then drive the hour to Waconia and do another parade.
Oh, man.
It was awful. Because we couldn't skip the Brooklyn Park Parade because that was our home parade. Yeah. And we couldn't skip the Waconia Parade because that was one of the biggest parades. And I remember one of the band moms turned to me at one point and was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah." And then I went into the porta potty and my legs were all chafed. Just like, what do I do?
Yeah. I never had to pull 2 parades in the same day.
It was only that one year. Every other year it was fine. People pretty much stopped showing up to the Brooklyn Park one.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I can't really blame them. There were other parades they could do.
Yeah, bigger parades.
We weren't offering a whole
Brooklyn
lot.
Park wasn't that great of a parade either. Waconia would come to us because we were like rivals at that point. So Waconia marched at least in, for sure, 2006. Probably at least one other time after that. And then 2010, the year I worked with the band, that got rained out and Waconia was supposed to be there.
I remember that parade getting rained out.
I was so unhappy.
Because it was like, it rained for like 30 minutes, they canceled the parade, and then it was sunshine all night.
Parade was supposed to start at 6:30, started raining at 6, stopped raining at 6:30, but they'd already called the parade. They called it on the way. So between me driving from school to the parade route, that was when they called it. And all the bands except for Waconia were already in Brooklyn Park. You never really got understood how like parades were managed, but Brooklyn Park definitely seemed to be one of the least well managed parades that we did every year. There was one year that like the parade manager drove past our show on the golf cart as we were doing the show. There was one year, possibly the same year, when they awarded grand champion to the wrong band. And like apparently afterward they're like on the track exchanging trophies, trying to figure out who was supposed to get what, because they announced the winners and then they announced the caption winners, so like best drumline, best color guard, best wins. And I think it was Osseo and Champlain Park, and Osseo beat Champlain Park, but then Champlain Park won all the captions. And we're standing in the stands listening to this, like, how did Osseo win if they lost all of the captions? Well, apparently they didn't win. They just screwed it up. That was, another memory from marching band. Malacca didn't used to have a grand champion trophy. It was just, there were just classes, and you would win your class, and then they wouldn't do a grand champion. And then in 2007, we're going through expecting to win our class, and then they don't call our name. Like, they don't call our name at all for any of the awards, any of the places. And apparently the drum majors down on the field were like, when they didn't call our name for the class whatever, all the other drum majors' eyes just shot over to us. And then it was like the one year they awarded a grand champion. But instead of pulling a grand champion from the different class winners, they let the band who finished second technically in our class win the class, and then we won grand champion. And then that was the last year we did Malacca. It was a nice short
We did Sock
parade.
Rapids, that parade. I think it was the first year that we were going. We had to pull over in Rogers because one of the buses broke down. Just like a school bus, not even a coach bus. So they had to like bring out a replacement school bus. And then we got to Sock Rapids and there was like a tornado watch. So we were just sitting in this like junior high gym. Just like, what is happening right now? And Mom, Emily, and Grandma and Grandpa were supposed to come to the parade, and they ended up sitting in a Burger King bathroom because there was a tornado.
Yeah,
well,
we had some different weather. We had some different weather-related issues. 2006, Lake Crystal got rained out while we were down there. And then band director gets on the bus after we've been waiting for hours. He's like, "We're the last band in the city. We win." And then 2007, it rained at Foley while we were warming up and practicing. And the drum line was separate from the rest of the band at that point. So you could like see the rain coming towards us. And then the drumline director cut us off. He's like, "Okay, everyone, grab your instruments and bring them on the bus." And then we were dry and the rest of the band got wet before they got on the bus. I think 2008 in Sauk Rapids, after the parade, we ended up in their school because there was severe weather. So we had planned on doing the awards ceremony possibly in the gym anyways because rain was coming. But then we were like just chilling in the halls waiting for the weather to pass before we did that. I don't remember other weather issues. Oh, there was Waconia 2006. I had a jacket that I thought was a rain jacket that was not a rain jacket, and I got very wet. There was another time,
Tater Days,
I think when I was playing snare, that there was rain so hard that it was bouncing off the snare like into your face.
Tater Days 2014, the Brooklyn Park Parade. I remember it was raining, but they didn't cancel the parade. And that was the year that we had like a cart that we marched with that we unfolded and people would like march across it. And we had like 3 people slip and fall on the cart because it was covered in rain.
Yep.
Why would we do this? Just call the parade at this point.
I was always thankful for...
That was also...
I was always thankful
I think that was the year that...
I was always thankful for being in drumline and never having to kneel as one of our movements. Because they would always be like, "Remember to get your shout wipes so that you can clean your uniforms." Good thing we had white uniforms.
Yeah, I think that year that it was raining in Brooklyn Park, I think that was the same year that after we finished the parade and we were marching to the buses, our band director decided to play, because we had things hooked up to stereo, and our band director decided to play Happy by Pharrell Williams, which is at like 180 beats per minute. And so we were marching like as fast as we could to the buses. Like, why are you doing this to us? Because beat. Stop it.
Yeah. The year that I marched independent drumline, I thought that I knew what fast marching was, and then I did that, and I was like, we had no idea what fast marching was, because we had parts of our show were at 180. It's like, my goodness, we're just flying around the floor. And then I went back that year and worked with the band, and they were complaining about marching 152 or whatever. And it's like, you have no idea.
My first year, 2013, we had the drum solo in our show was at 180. And we tried our best to keep up. And there's like one video, I think it's the Brooklyn Center Parade, you're watching us, and you can see that we're all just falling behind.
Oh, was that parade route over the bridge?
I don't know if that one was, but we did march over the bridge at one point, and no one warned us what marching on a bridge felt like.
It is the weirdest feeling in the world. So the Brooklyn Center Parade, when we did it, would go over a bridge, over 94. And when you're all marching in step and you're hitting the bridge all at the exact same time, the bridge will shake. And you can feel the bridge shaking as you march over it. And it is like exhilarating and terrifying all at the same time.
I think it was my freshman year we marched over the bridge. I don't know if the route changed or what, but I remember marching over the bridge and thinking that I was reliving Alexandria from the past year, and I thought I was like about to pass out, so I didn't know what was happening. I was just all of a sudden bouncing up and down.
Yeah.
And it was like we finished the parade. It's like, oh, what'd you think of that bridge? You couldn't have warned us.
Yeah, we got warned at least. The heck was that?
Are my headphones dying?
I just heard a bing beep.
My headphones might be dying.
Oh. Mine have survived this whole time. I wonder if it's because I'm on the computer now and not on the phone.
Mine weren't too happy about charging today, so I don't think they were fully charged when we started.
Gotcha. Well, we did start with discussions about past trips, but it morphed into a marching band discussion.
Yeah, I think we have more to talk about both trips and marching band. Yep.
But maybe not to the point where I want to devote entire episodes, at least to the trips, maybe to marching band. I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens.